Hello, and welcome back to Voices of Student Success, Inside Higher Ed's podcast series on student retention, engagement, and graduation strategies. I'm your host, Ashley Marrieder, Student Success Reporter for Inside Higher Ed. Thanks for joining us today. This series is a companion to our Student Success newsletter, which is a weekday publication that provides ideas and inspiration for higher education practitioners who work in or care about student success. This season is our Back to School series, which is all about preparing you, the practitioner, to thrive this fall with strategies and initiatives that can impact student success. Shh. Today, we're talking about the campus quiet space, or you might know it as the library. In reality, more college libraries are serving as hubs for student success, offering a central location for students to hang out, work with their peers, and connect to support resources like tutoring. This reimagination of the library often comes with a physical reconfiguration, including relocation of offices and expanded services, all in hopes of supporting access and student success. In this episode, I spoke with Katie Clark, who's a higher education market manager for design firm KI, to understand the evolution of the campus library and what it means for students and practitioners.
This episode of the Student Success Podcast is sponsored by KI. Supporting the development of world-class learning and campus environments has been and always will be at the core of KI. The KI team has built its reputation for excellence in education for over 70 years, working shoulder to shoulder with educational partners to develop a roadmap for a future of innovation. Learn more at ki.com/the key.
Katie, thank you so much for joining me today. It's great to have you on. Just to get us started, can you introduce yourself and your organization to our listeners?
Absolutely. Really glad to be here. My name is Katie Clark. I work for KI, which is a contract furniture manufacturer, and I'm their higher education market manager, which really means I think about college and university all the time when it comes to physical design of spaces on college campuses.
Today, we're talking about libraries, and I know KI does a lot of research around the evolution of the library and sort of what it looks like now. I wonder if you can just kick off the conversation just with that overview. What have you learned and what's the discussion happening right now?
Absolutely. We took on a research expedition, as we called it, to look into what is the future library on a college campus. What does that look like? What does it mean out in the world? We partnered with Studio Finn, who did research, both ethnographic, secondary, and just piles and piles of interviews and walkabouts on college campuses, some experiential journey mapping. And what we really learned is that the library is just as important as a classroom on a college campus, that it is essential to the operations. And while it may be changing and shifting as the world shifts, as technology comes in and, shakes up the library like a snow globe, and librarians and administrators are figuring out what to do next, that it's still essential and that it is a centerpiece of the student experience across the country.
Yeah, I think when most people think about a library, they're thinking like reading rainbow. They're thinking the book nook corner and the stacks and the quiet sections and things like that. But that's really not the case on college campuses. What did you learn about just the ecosystem of libraries that now exist?
Yeah, I would say gone are the days of silence being the thing you think of in a library space. There's a lot less shushing going on, and
maybe for better.
Yeah, I would think so. And you can bring your coffee into the library. You can have a snack in there, which I think
is revolutionary,
huge, right? Essentially, what we're seeing is that a library is a temple of knowledge. That is sort of the phrase that we latched onto. It is a reverent place for learning and for studying, that students still see it as, I'm going to go to the library to study. They're still packed. They're still full of folks from all across the community. And it's a resource that is used by not just the students, but by faculty, by community members. When we think about town and gown relationships, access to the library is still a big part of that. But as technology has come in, as we've seen a lot more focus on digital literacy, on on the ways in which we're using the internet in really substantial ways. There's not a card catalog anymore, right? It's all online. You don't have to have your dime to make a copy of the Encyclopedia Britannica, which is something I did when I was little. But what we're really looking at is the library serving as a place for learning, for study, but also a place for students to show off what they're learning. You think about anyone who's written a thesis, it gets bound and is shelved in the library, right? So it's also a really great example of a place that has always been updating itself. It has always been thinking about what's coming and what's happening next. And we've seen that physical footprint shifting. I think that's the biggest part of the changes. We're seeing a lot of folks or a lot of institutions really take books off campus into large warehouses that are off-site. Students and faculty members can still access that information in the same way you'd sort of request a specific book. It would come to you, maybe it would take a day or two. And that means that there are less stacks than there used to be. And there's new things moving in. And the new things moving in are broad and wide in terms of what's there. But think about the teaching and learning commons, maybe where faculty are coming together to discuss pedagogy. Think about tutoring centers, writing center, student success centers, maker spaces. I mean, the list really goes on and on depending on the type of institution and what they're able to do. But it has created far more of a hub of campus. So I think about a library as a community space in the same way that I think about it, a campus center, a student union, a dining hall. It is a central communal space for the institution and for the members of the institution.
Yeah, that's something in my work in student success. We're seeing libraries become part of that knitted intersection of student success services, whether that's being physically moved into the library or the library is assisting with that work. I wonder if you can talk about that intersection where it's all those academic and service supports.
Right. So I think the biggest question that I always think about with student access is, do students know what the resources are? And do they know that they can ask for something, anything? And then if they know they can ask for it, will they ask for it? Because sometimes asking for help is a really hard thing to do. At my former institution, we used the phrase asking for help is a sign of strength. Mm-hmm. And I think that it was something that we introduced from the first thing that happened at orientation forward. So when I think about access, what I'm really thinking about is, do students feel comfortable walking into this space? Do they feel like they're supposed to be there? Do they feel a sense of belonging? And do they know that they can come in and use all of those resources? So for me, sometimes it's even less about what resources are in there, but how do we open the door so that everybody knows they can walk through that door? Student success offices being part of the library footprint, I think is a really interesting sort of structural idea. As you're taking an office that might be, in a corner of another building that you have to really think about going to, you have to know where it is. A lot of students have to go to the library during orientation to learn how to use it. And then pointing out all those other resources, I think can be really helpful. With so much working against students right now, when I think about their mental health, when I think about imposter syndrome and stereotype threat and the chaos of social media, I really like those other support offices living in one of those hubs. So if they can't be in the student union, right next to the post office where students might pick up their physical mail, the opportunity to have them in the library, I think, is a really positive and affirming location so that professionals can see students coming and going all the time. They can encourage them. If you're going to come by over here in the Student Access Center, make sure you check out this other thing that's happening in the library, or make sure you go upstairs and take a look at that, podcasting studio or the maker space if you're interested in thinking about these other things. And I really like that as a centerpiece for the library.
Yeah, I think with access and promoting these services to students and making them feel more like things that they can use, I always think of libraries as intimidating. Like the temple of knowledge idea is something that I think is both really powerful because it's true, but it can also be very scary. I think about my parents are University of Washington alums, and Suzzallo Library is like Hogwarts. Like it's super big and gothic and beautiful, but it feels like if you drop something, somebody's going to come around and like escort you out of the library, you know? So when it comes to the physical space and how we're using the library, how can we make sure that students feel like this is their space and that temple is somewhere where they can go and visit and be a part of?
The reverence that you want in a library of like, oh, this is a space I've walked into. It feels collegiate. I think we can all think about the college tour that takes you into that library. I think Harvard has a great example. Johns Hopkins has this very similar to what you described, this sort of like Hogwarts. Am I in Cambridge? Like what's happening? Right. Can I touch a book in here or do I need white gloves? I think the balance really is between, for institutions, balancing this value of tradition, the value of having that reverent signature space. What we call a signature space is you walk in and you know that that is the University of fill in the blank. It is, there are logos, there are color patterns, there are ways that you just know that you're part of that institution, and balancing that with innovation and with the changing dynamics of what's happening. So when we're thinking about library design and balancing that value of tradition, maybe an architectural statement that makes you feel a certain way when you're in there, we're talking also about how does this feel like a community space? What is the entrance and vestibule that welcomes me in? Do I feel like there's a coziness factor, right? Like a comfortability to this. One of the things we see a lot is an inclusion of biophilic design, which is bringing the outside in. So bringing nature into the library. I think there's a lot of libraries that don't have the greatest light and acoustics, right? I think of the dungeon stacks vibes, right? Like super dark in the basement, in the stacks. And some students also really want that vibe when they're studying. So it's also balancing out this new, bright, airy, brand new building with sometimes it is helpful for me to go and really focus and sit in my carrel and have these sort of blinders around me because I've got 17 devices on the table that are pinging at me all the time. So it's really designing for a complicated everyone. We're designing, one of the things that we talk a lot about in our research is me versus we spaces. In a moment where I really want to see students getting out of their residence halls, out of a closed door space, I want them to come to the library to study, to be around other people, just to get out, right? Just to be out and about around other people. And so we have to design for every kind of study type too. So if somebody wants that silent space that I can't have any distractions at all, then there should be a quiet room in the library. And a lot of places are moving towards, this is the quiet floor, or this is a specific area where you really can't talk. I think for many people, think about the quiet car on an Amtrak train, right? You don't talk loudly on the cell phone or people will give you dagger eyes. So it's sort of like that. There's other sort of more collaborative spaces. Think about, a conference room table that's in maybe a glass-walled room where students could work on a group project together. They could spread out on a big table. You might have a TA hosting, their own sort of tutoring or office hours, but you can see into it. You can see other students studying or working together. So you have this idea of the me and we spaces, a place where I can go and be quiet or I can be around other people. Because I think what we found too is that students want to be around others to help them study. I feel this way, right? If I'm around other people who are focused, I'm gonna focus a little bit better than if I'm, alone and distracted by myself. We also think about a phrase that's come up a lot is together alone or alone together. So even if you're going to be alone, even if you're going to have your earbuds in and focus on your own work, you're around other people who are doing that. And when we're thinking about library design, we're designing for every different type of experience. The other thing that's come up that I think is really interesting is the idea of generational design. So really thinking about the multiple ages that are going to be coming in and using that library space and making sure that you're thinking about a real spectrum, right? From your, 18-year-old first year student to your faculty member who's been on that campus as a tenured faculty member for decades. And ensuring that there's equal access to information for all types of learning and all types of, familiarity with technology and comfortability with technology. We saw in a lot of our research too, that is even more important when you're looking at a community library where you do have, you mentioned earlier, the Reading Rainbow fun kids nook where you can come in and the librarian reads a couple books for young ones. But there's so many other things that a library provides that we have to really think about that generational use. And I think that's really important on a college campus too, especially as we're seeing the ages of students who are enrolling. It's just a much broader number than I think we saw in years past.
Yeah, you can think about the intergenerational just as students and faculty, but also I'm thinking students and their kids, right? Parenting students are a growing number, or two-year colleges are more likely to serve intergenerational constituents and things like that. We talked a little bit about technology and the ways that it's been integrated into the library, but you also alluded to some of the ways that technology is changing the spaces that we're using in the library, like podcast studios or 3D printing or things like that. I wonder if you can talk about how tech is both innovating, but also driving innovation within the library.
Yeah, I think the beautiful thing that we've come to learn about technology, and we saw certainly reflected in this research, is that it will continue to change. And so more than anything, we have to prepare library spaces as they're being designed to be open to that change. I think an easy example of this for people to see and understand is the plugs that we use. I have an iPhone and I can sometimes use a USB. For some phones, you need the C plug. For some, right? There's all these different things in the course of a couple of years. If we've built into furniture a particular style of plug, it could be obsolete within mere moments of install. And so some of what we think about when we're talking about innovation within the technology sphere is to create something that's going to last a long time, understanding how things are going to change. Because right now, maker spaces are everywhere. We love a maker space. We love a place for students to go and get messy, to build, to make. But I don't know what's going to be popular and really exciting in 15 years. And libraries don't get to redesign themselves every 2 years. It really happens every 15, 20, maybe longer, depending on the institution. They may get to update a certain part, but it's a little bit of a slow moving ship here. So we really, most importantly, want to make sure that what we're doing in power delivery, in making sure that that Wi-Fi is moving through big, thick walls of these older buildings is really meeting everyone to what they need. And that the technological infrastructure is set up to shift and change, which is a hard way to design, right? To prepare, build something now and prepare for it to change pretty quickly. But I think if we don't do that, we're setting ourselves up for failure. And I think librarians are sort of the epitome of lifelong learners. If I think about the role and job that they have, they are constantly learning about what is new and trying to help their students and their colleagues also learn those things too. So it's a beautiful marriage, I would say, between a space that is now really inviting a lot of different and new things, right? Opportunities, centers, resources, with a community of professionals that has been really good at keeping up and being part of that.
One institution that's taken library development to the next level is Marquette University in Wisconsin. This fall, Marquette opened the doors to its Lemonis Student Success Center, which is a remodel of the Memorial Library and a new central hub for students. I spoke with Lemonis Center Director Marilyn Jones and Marquette's Vice Provost for Academic Affairs and Student Success, John Su, to learn about the vision behind the center and how it better integrates student resources into the existing library systems. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to join me. It's great to have you on. Just to get us started, can you introduce yourselves, your names, your positions, and how that fits into Marquette?
My name is Marilyn Jones, and I'm the inaugural director for the new Lemonis Center for Student Success here on campus at Marquette University.
And I'm John Su, Vice Provost for Academic Affairs and Student Success at Marquette University.
Wonderful. So Marilyn, you already alluded to this, but you're in a brand new role at a brand new center. Can you kind of give me the history? What is this and what is your job?
The Lemonis Center for Student Success, the genesis actually emerged out of our conversations with students. It was a really wonderful series of, we had, focus groups. We had some intercept interviews in the library, as a space where students just love being. It's our campus community center. And we really heard from them. They said there are a remarkable array of services and supports all across campus for every need they could imagine, practically. But the onus of navigating those services was on the student. So the vision for the Lemonis Center for Student Success then was to try and reverse that dynamic. How could we create a space of academic belonging where we would have the right supports, the right environment that students would already want to be there before a moment emerged for a kind of a help-seeking behavior, and then it would already be there for them. They find the place of belonging, we bring the support to them.
In my current role, really, it's getting this space up and running. I can tell you we are buzzing. Students have found us and they're here for different reasons, right? For services. So we have centralized important services here at the Lemonis Center, but we also provide programming and we create community and connections to mentors. Really, we're all about engagement and a culture of mentorship. So we offer spaces that bring people together and support student growth.
I love that. Maybe, John, you can talk a little bit about the decision to put it in the Memorial Library specifically, because I know a lot of campuses have considered renovating their libraries to rethink like computer lab spaces that might not be as useful to students now that they all have laptops and cell phones and things like that. So when you and the campus were looking at where can we put this center and how can we imagine this better for students, why the library?
The library, our Rayner Library, is the heart of our campus. When we were doing our focus group interviews, one of the things we had was we had students put up little dots across campus, their heat map, where do they want to be? And the library was it. It was the logical place to meet students where they were at. In addition, we have this really remarkable dean of the library, Tara Bayerajan, who had a vision for the library already of saying she really wanted that library to be the front porch for our university, that kind of gathering space. And so it just became really intuitive when we heard the voices of our students, the kind of the vision of our dean, and the kind of the thoughtfulness of our provost and president saying, let's bring these together and locate it there right in the library.
Yeah. Maybe, Marilyn, you can talk to the functional elements of it. Who's all located in the library now and how does it work?
Yes. Well, I'm glad that John mentioned that the location piece, because we are strategically located at the heart of the institution. And the goal with that was to make it easy for students to run into us, to find us. And in terms of the resources that we provide at the Lemonis Center, I want to start with the new Ask Me desk that we have. This is right when students come in, there is this desk that welcomes everyone who comes to the space, and it really is there to allow students to ask all kinds of questions. So it's a place that normalizes, I would even say it celebrates and invites students to embrace the importance of asking questions and seeking help. It's fully staffed by over 25 students who have been highly trained. Yes, we have graduate and undergraduate students. And you have to think about that. That is really a student success initiative. Students are there sharing their expertise and knowledge, but also, interacting with others. And that's one of the important pieces of the center. This is also the space where students can go and sign up for some of the services that are taking place. We house the Academic Resource Center and we also house the Career Center in this space. So we provide academic coaching, tutoring. We have over 300 tutoring sessions led by students happening on a weekly basis. We also have career exploration and education to like, as John mentioned, to provide that type of career and professional formation. But there's so much more to the center. We have a commuter lounge. We have 4 phone booths where students can kind of like take a break and join a call. And we have a very, very popular photo booth that makes it easy for students to get professional headshots, and lots of collaborative spaces that are technology enhanced. So students there can meet with people across campus virtually. They can have virtual interviews. They can have those rooms are used for so many different things, including taking exams and when they need a space. But we can say it's really a convenient space where students just come and work together and meet their mentors and have the opportunity to grow with others.
Yeah, it's like Disneyland for student success. Everything's there and a lot of it is fun.
Actually, if we can copyright what you just said, Disneyland is student success, right?
Well, I'll sell it to you later.
We want Lemonis Center to be the happiest place on earth.
One of the issues in higher ed, we have all these amazing resources for students, but they don't always utilize them, either because they don't know that they exist or they can feel like that space is intimidating or things like that. How is access at the center of the center and the ways that students can interact both with staff and its resources?
We talk about this a lot. We are surrounding students with resources, whether they know it or not, but it's very intentional on our part. And John and I call this the art of reimagining student success into a large physical space, starting with our partnerships, for example, with staff and faculty. We have been very successful in connecting with faculty members, and they come to the space and they help us introduce students to the resources. So it feels like, that's great. My professor there, my mentor there, someone I know across campus is there. I should be there as well. We have also been very intentional in, for example, having some of those high DFW courses take place in the Lemonis Center. When students come out, they get to see one of those sessions, tutoring sessions that are taking place, and they know that's part of what it looks like to be successful in college. So we are helping them see that tutoring, for example, doesn't come from a place of deficit or something that they need to do, but it's what successful students do. So that intentionality in our location, in the who's at the center and what's happening at the center, all of that, I think, really helps decrease the barriers to access. And as I mentioned, our Ask Me This students, for example, they're our ambassadors. They share opportunities with others, and they make it sound like they're fun and less scary, and that other peers should explore those opportunities.
I think I'd only just add one more thing. I think when you're talking about the art of student success, it's really finding ways to integrate technology and mentorship. That's really the art, right? Because we know there's a subset of students who will engage in help-seeking behaviors. But we also know it's often the case that the students who most may need support may not be in that right space at that moment of stress to seek it out. So how do we better integrate technology and mentorship? And so one of the things we've been trying to do is connecting the Lemonis Center to all the other areas on campus through our own My Success CRM that we're building right now, and developing kind of early alerts to identify students who may be at a lower level of academic engagement, helping to let their advisors have that kind of information so that the advisor can reach out and say, hey, how's it going? Tell me what's going on in your semester. And then that way, that personal invitation to, seek out the Lemonis Center, seek out other supports, so that every student feels there's someone who is saying, your success matters to me.
Yeah, I love that. I also wanted to ask about technology in general in the center. And so you already sort of touched on the ways that the center can help spur other interventions and ensure that the student's entire network is aware of where they might need help. But what other ways are you integrating technology into the physical space or the ways that students interact with the center?
Well, I have to say the integration of technology has been central in the work that we're doing. So one of the highlights for us is, for example, those cross-collaborative learning spaces that are enhanced with technology. Students, they just bring their computers, the screen is there, the monitor, the cameras, and they have connection to adapters. We provide everything. Even if a student is struggling to maybe have a working device or their computer is acting up, they can quickly go to Rainer, just across the bridge, right? Because we're connected by a bridge, and borrow a computer there. Or if they're having issues with technology, the tech squad is there. So we're really leveraging the resources that we have across the two areas, the Rainer Library and the Lemonis Center. So, but just the fact that students can collaborate, I see them as I walk through some of those interview suites or the tutoring rooms, I see students joining virtually while the other 2 or 3 group members are there, and they're all connecting. I also know that with so many things going on, students might get sick, and they don't have to miss a tutoring session because now they can join virtually. That's one way the technology helps us. They don't have to miss out on any of those services. Now, the Ask Me Desk, I think that's where we see a lot of that technology in helping us understand, okay, what are the needs of our students? We are documenting questions. We're able to keep track of the patterns. We're able to then have broad conversations across campus about what we're seeing. We see cycles. At the beginning of the semester, it's okay, my classes, technology, D2L, for example, in our cases, how do I get access to this textbook? All those things right now with midterms done and advising taking place, we see some of those questions about career. And not knowing students what they're planning to do after they graduate, or if they have to consider transferring from a major to another. We can keep track of those questions. Also, by having this referral system in place, we can see if students are getting the support and connecting with the people that they need to connect with. It really helps us connect in a very caring manner. And like John said, students know that we care about them and that someone is here to make sure that at any step in the process, someone's going to reach out and say, hey, we mentioned this. Were you able to follow up on that? Do you have any other questions?
That's awesome. Something I wanted to ask about, and you kind of alluded to this with the physical bridge between the library and the Success Center, but it's a really fun, I would say, dynamic between the two buildings, the more traditional library and then this new hub for student resources and belonging and things like that. What does that partnership look like, and how do you collaborate with the library?
It's the beauty, Ashley, as you say, that we are located right in the library. The stacks surround the Lemonis Center for Student Success, and we are connected by one of the most popular places on campus, the bridge, where students study, they have coffee, they're engaged with the library resources. Tara Bayerjan, the dean, was a member of our student success coordinating committee that led to the development and implementation of this. And we have ongoing meetings of various directors with the library and support centers to really ensure that collaboration continues.
Mm-hmm. We, in addition to what John mentioned, we get together almost on a weekly basis between the different teams who are at the Lemonis Center and Rainer, because we are in constant conversations about how to better support students. So if students are in our space, we also want to make sure they understand there are other services happening in this complex that we call, right? Our librarians are amazing. We are always planning different activities. So we go back to that idea of belonging and opportunities to create those. We have partnered up with events where we come together and celebrate, for example, different holidays. So we're in the bridge and we're having events and we're passing out goodies to the students, and they see that we work together to support them. We are planning a really fun event that involves both Rainer and the Lemonis Center, and that's the Late Night Against Procrastination. And we are staying late here, supporting our students and helping them connect with their resources and preparing for finals. So we're excited about that.
That's awesome. Nothing like spending all night in the library, but at least it'll be fun.
It will be. It will be.
That's great. Well, the center opened its physical doors this fall, but you've obviously been doing a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure that students are ready and it all works lovely together. What are some of those future goals and plans now that students are engaging in the physical space?
Marquette's student success strategy really tries to build on our mission as a Catholic Jesuit institution, which, has almost a 500-year tradition, really focused on formation of the whole person. We really recognize your academic flourishing, your kind of emotional, your psychic, your spiritual, they're all intertwined, and that developing all of that together in that kind of very explicit, progressive, developmental mode is crucial to our students and their success. So really the Lemonis Center is trying to live that out. And I think you already heard Marilyn start to talk about the services that really support students from first day to first destination through our culture of mentorship and engagement for all students. So that if you are, at your first stages, you want that first tour, you want to go to the Ask Me desk. Then you're going on. Well, maybe one of my classes is not kind of going quite as I was hoped. I'm going to get that tutoring. Maybe I'm starting to think about, there's a different kind of life pathway, career. Then as you're starting to develop the integration of career and your major, think about what those experiential learning opportunities. And so really, I think the future of the Success Center is building out, again, that progressive and developmental mindset for the formation of our students. Marilyn, other things you're really hoping for in the next few years?
Yeah, I have to say, John, I really, really appreciate that you're bringing this idea of, of our mission. When we talk to students, it is clear that they're not defining student success in terms of grades, but in becoming a well-rounded person. So as we're looking to the future, that's something that we are keeping in mind. Students want to be people with and for others, like we said. So to support that, we're looking at different opportunities. For example, we're thinking and being intentional in how we connect students to experiential learning. We want students to hear both from peers, but also from faculty members and staff about those opportunities. I know our Career Center, for example, is working very closely with faculty to infuse career discernment in our coursework, especially early on, like John said, in a student's academic journey. Now, personally, I think the center provides so many wonderful opportunities. I mean, we've talked about the cool places, the technology, but I know as a first gen, as a student of color, as an immigrant myself who struggled with the English language, that, what really impacts retention and persistence is when a student feel like there's a home, that your institution is a home, and that someone really cares, like John said. So as we continue to think about our goals, we are really thinking about how, even though we're a predominantly white institution, how we support students of colors, how we support commuters, first-gen students. How can students be their most authentic selves in a space like Marquette? So we are looking at programming and academic opportunities that can help elevate their experiences. I talk about experiential learning. Equity in access to those opportunities are key. So again, the Lemonis Center, amazing place, but it is really love and care for our students. And that means everyone will have access to our resources and opportunities on campus.
Oh, I love that so much. Well, thank you both so much for sharing. It was great speaking with you both.
Great. Thank you. Thanks.
Really appreciate this conversation.
And a very big thank you to our listeners for joining us today for this episode of Voices of Student Success. Our next episode, coming in 2 weeks, will discuss life design principles in higher education and how design thinking can better prepare students for their lives after graduation. That's all for this episode. I'm Ashley Marreeder, and I'll see you real soon.